Kola was a man who made people talk. He lived in the city of Asaba, a big place full of loud cars, bright lights, and busy people. The streets were always moving, full of sound and color. But even in such a noisy city, Kola's name was whispered like a secret. Not because he was loud, but because he was quiet, too quiet. He was tall and handsome, always wearing clean clothes and shiny shoes. He spoke gently and smiled with just enough charm to make people like him. But no one really knew him. He didn't go out much. He didn't laugh loudly like other rich men. He lived in a big white mansion with tall walls and guards at the gate. His home looked more like a palace than a house. The windows were always shut. At night, strange lights flickered through the curtains. Kola had many businesses in Asaba. He owned hotels, shops, and even a radio station. People said he was powerful. But they also said something else. He had married 6 women and all of them had died. The story went like this. Kola would go to a faraway village and choose a poor, beautiful girl to marry. He would bring gifts for the family, bags of rice, money, clothes, and sometimes even a small car. The families would be so happy, thinking their daughter had found a good life. Kola would marry the girl, take her to his mansion, and keep her there. Then, after a few months, the girl would become pregnant. And soon after, she would die. Every single time. Kola would say it was a sickness. He would cry, arrange a quick funeral, and bury her inside his own compound. He never allowed anyone to come for the burial, not even the girl's parents. He said it was his way of honoring her. The strangest part was that no one asked too many questions. The families stayed quiet, maybe out of fear or maybe because they had taken his gifts. Some said the money made them blind. So Kola went on living in his mansion, rich and untouched. But people whispered, "Why do they all die? Why always during pregnancy? Why does he bury them at home?" No one had answers. But no one dared to speak too loudly. Then came Enkay. Enkay was not like the others. She was young, yes. She was beautiful, yes. But she was also smart. She had studied at the university and had dreams of becoming a makeup artist. She lived in a small town with her parents and younger brother. Her family didn't have much, but they had love. Enkay often worked small jobs doing makeup for weddings and birthdays. Her hands were quick, and her smile made people trust her. One day, Kola came to her town. No one knew why he was there. Maybe he had heard about Enkay. Maybe someone told him she was different. He saw her at a wedding where she was doing the bride's makeup. He watched her and something in his eyes changed. He walked up to her gently, introduced himself, and offered to take her for a soft drink after the event. Enkay hesitated, but he was polite. That's how it started. Kola didn't rush. He visited her town again and again. He spoke kindly to her family. He brought gifts, food, clothes, money. He talked about his businesses, his life in Asaba, his hope to find a good woman. He acted like a gentleman. He never tried to touch her before marriage. Enkay began to think, maybe he's really good. Maybe the stories about him are just lies. Her parents were happy. "This is a blessing," they said. "A rich man wants to marry our daughter." Enkay didn't feel love for Kola, but she felt safe. She thought maybe that was enough. The wedding was small but fancy. Kola made sure it looked beautiful. He dressed her in gold and white, gave her a ring with a stone that sparkled in the sun. People clapped and cheered. "She's lucky," they whispered. After the wedding, Enkay moved to the mansion in Asaba. First, everything seemed fine. The house was huge, with shiny floors, tall windows, and rooms filled with furniture from other countries. Kitchen had food she had never tasted before. The bathroom smelled like flowers. Guards opened every door for her. Felt like a dream. But dreams don't last forever. Soon, Kola began to change. He told Enkay that she couldn't visit her family. "Not yet," he said. "They'll distract you. You're my wife now." He said it with a smile, but his eyes didn't smile with him. He gave her a phone but kept it locked. She couldn't call out. She could only speak to the people he allowed. He showed her all the rooms in the house, except one. There was one door on the second floor that stayed locked. Kola wore the key around his neck, even when he slept. He said, "Never go in there. It's my private office. Very important business secrets." First, Enkay didn't mind. She had her own space. She spent her time reading, drawing, and watching TV. But as weeks passed, she grew lonely. The guards didn't speak to her. The maid stayed quiet. Kola was gone most days, and when he came home, he barely talked. He just ate, looked at her, and went upstairs to the locked room. Enkay began to feel trapped. She missed her family. She missed laughter. And she started to wonder, what's behind that door? She remembered the stories. The 6 wives. The private burials. The silence. One night, she followed him quietly. She watched him open the door. He slipped inside and she heard a strange sound, like chanting. The lights flickered under the door. He stayed in there for hours. Her heart beat faster. She knew something was wrong. The next day, she did something bold. She talked to one of the maids, pretending to ask about something simple. Then she asked, "Do you know what's in that room upstairs?" The maid's face changed. She looked around, lowered her voice, and whispered, "Don't ask. Just pray." Enkay couldn't sleep that night. She needed answers. But she also needed the key. And Kola never took it off. So she waited. One day, he went out for a meeting and left his jacket on the couch. Key was inside the pocket. Enkay ran to the room, pulled the key from the jacket, and made a quick trip to a small locksmith shop nearby. She told the man, "Please make a copy of this key. I lost mine." She paid him extra and promised not to tell anyone. That night, she returned the original key to Kola's jacket. He never noticed. Days later, when Kola left again for a trip, Enkay held the copy in her shaking hand. Her heart thumped. She climbed the stairs slowly. She stood in front of the door. The air around her felt cold. She slid the key into the lock. Turned. The door creaked open. Inside, the room was dark, lit only by red candles on the walls. The air smelled strange, like blood and smoke. On shelves were glass jars filled with dried leaves, bones, and powders. Symbols were drawn on the walls in black paint. In the middle of the room stood 6 glass boxes. Coffins. Inside each one was a woman. Her belly was round, her eyes closed, her skin pale. They looked peaceful, but Enkay knew they were dead. She saw their wedding rings. She saw their faces. She remembered seeing photos of Kola's past wives. Her legs felt weak. She wanted to scream, but her voice disappeared. Then she heard the gate open. Kola had returned. She turned and ran, slamming the door behind her. Key slipped from her hand, but she kept running. Down the stairs, across the marble floor, past the guards. She screamed for help. Kola came charging after her, eyes wide with rage. "Enkay! Stop!" But it was too late. The guards stopped him. Enkay cried, "He's killing women! He's keeping their bodies upstairs. Please call the police." The guards didn't know what to believe. But Enkay's fear was real. They called the police. The officers came quickly. They searched the mansion. They opened the locked room and found everything Enkay had said. The jars. The symbols. Coffins. Kola was arrested. He didn't fight. He didn't speak. He just stared at Enkay with cold eyes. In jail, he confessed. Years ago, he had made a deal with a dark spirit. If he sacrificed unborn children, he would stay young and rich. He chose poor girls so no one would ask questions. He said he didn't feel sorry. Enkay did not sleep for many nights after Kola's arrest. Her body was safe, but her mind was filled with heavy shadows. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of the women in the glass coffins. She could hear the silent cries from their lips, frozen in death. She could hear the whispers of the mansion calling her back. She had left the mansion that night with only her phone, the clothes on her back, and a heart broken by horror. The police had taken her statement. Her voice trembled the whole time, but she told them everything. About the locked room, the key, the bodies, the strange symbols, the smells, and the fear. People in the city were shocked. The news spread fast, moving like wildfire. Radio stations spoke in hushed voices. The newspapers printed headlines in big, bold letters. Rich man of Asaba caught in dark secret, and brave woman exposes deaths of 6 wives. People who once admired Kola now avoided saying his name. They shook their heads and whispered, "We should have known something was wrong." But even with Kola in jail, Enkay didn't feel safe. She was scared that his spirit would come back. She was scared that someone else might come after her. The nightmares would not leave her alone. Police gave her a safe place to stay for a while, just a small room behind a church building. An old woman named Mama Jaja took care of the place. She cooked for Enkay, gave her warm water to bathe, and held her hands when she cried. "You're safe now, my child," Mama Jaja said again and again. "You are a lioness. You walked into a cave of death and came out alive." But Enkay didn't feel like a lioness. She felt like a small bird that had flown through fire. She didn't go outside much. She was afraid of people staring. Some looked at her with pity. Some with fear. Some thought she had used witchcraft to escape. Others thought she was cursed. But many women, especially older ones, wanted to meet her. Days passed, then weeks. The police asked her to return to the mansion, to help with the final search. They needed her to guide them through the rooms, to tell them what she saw and where. She didn't want to go. But she also knew the truth had to be complete. So she went back. The mansion looked exactly the same from the outside. Clean walls, tall gates, flower beds trimmed with care. But the beauty was empty now, like a mask hiding a rotten face. Inside, everything was cold. The furniture had been covered with white cloth. The walls were quiet. No guards. No music. No signs of life. She walked with 2 police officers and a crime officer with a camera. Together, they moved from room to room. Kitchen was still full of food. The sitting room still had her wedding photo on the wall. Enkay stared at it for a long time. She looked happy in the photo, dressed in gold, eyes shining. That girl didn't know what was coming. They moved upstairs. Her heart thudded as they stood in front of the forbidden room. The door was broken now, kicked open by the police weeks before. They stepped inside. The smell was still there, a mix of candle smoke, blood, and something older, something foul. Candles had melted into puddles. The jars still lined the shelves. Some were broken. The air felt heavier than before. The glass coffins had been removed. But stains remained on the floor, dark shapes where they once stood. One officer shivered. "This is not just crime. This is evil." Enkay nodded. She pointed to the shelves. "These jars. I don't know what's inside, but he talked to them. He would light candles and speak strange words." They found a book under the shelf. The officer picked it up carefully. It was written in a language no one recognized. Symbols, drawings, strange shapes. On the last page, there was a drawing of a man surrounded by 6 women with empty eyes and swollen stomachs. The officer whispered, "He planned everything." This wasn't madness. It was a plan. They left the room, and Enkay begged not to return again. The government sealed the mansion. No one was allowed inside anymore. They would decide later what to do with it, maybe turn it into a shelter, maybe tear it down. But Enkay didn't care. She was done with the house of death. Kola remained in prison. He refused food. He didn't speak to anyone. The guards said he sometimes screamed in the night, shouting names that no one recognized. Then, one morning, they found him dead. He was lying on the prison floor, eyes wide open, blood pouring from his nose, his hands gripping his stomach like something inside was tearing him apart. The doctors said it was natural. But the prison staff knew better. The spirits took their payment, one guard whispered. He tried to cheat them for too long. Enkay was called to identify the body. She stood still, staring at his face. He looked nothing like the man who had once charmed her. His face was twisted, lips purple, veins showing through his skin. She said nothing. She just turned and walked away. The city buzzed again. People held meetings in churches and mosques. Families who had been silent for years began to speak. One woman cried on the radio, "That was my daughter. She died in that mansion. I didn't ask questions because I wanted a better life. I thought her suffering was worth our comfort. But now I know. Money means nothing when your child is gone." Enkay became a voice for young women. She visited schools. She spoke on radio shows. She told her story again and again. Not for fame, but to teach. She said, "Always ask questions. Don't be fooled by money or smooth words. Watch for red flags. And never ignore your gut feeling." People listened. One day, a group of women approached her with a plan. "Let's open a center," they said. "A place where girls can learn skills. Where they can be strong, earn their own money, and never depend on strangers." Enkay agreed. They called it the Safe Bloom Center. Started with just a few chairs and mirrors in a small room. Enkay taught makeup and beauty skills. Another woman taught tailoring. A third taught how to run a business. Girls came from everywhere. Some were poor. Some were scared. Some just wanted to feel seen. They learned. They grew. They bloomed. Enkay found peace in their laughter. But sometimes, late at night, she still heard the whisper of the mansion in her dreams. She still saw the eyes of the women behind the glass. So she did something quiet, something private. She went to each village where Kola's wives had come from. She met their mothers, their fathers, their siblings. She bowed her head. She cried with them. She sat in silence. She said, "I couldn't save them, but I will not let the world forget them." She wrote down their names in a book. She kept it on her desk. Every time a girl graduated from her center, she added their name to a new page, a page of healing. From death, she built life. And in the city of Asaba, the wind carried her story. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't a sweet story. But it was true. And sometimes the truth is the most powerful story of all. Enkay had learned to live without fear, but it didn't mean she forgot it. She still woke up some nights, her heart racing, with her eyes searching for shadows in corners. She told herself it was over, that the dark part of her life had ended. But her soul remembered. The Safe Bloom Center had grown. Every morning, the building buzzed with girls singing, chatting, and learning. There were posters on the wall with bright colors. "Be strong, be free, be you." Enkay moved like a river through the rooms, checking on classes, helping with makeup kits, answering questions. Her life was full. Her days were bright. But one afternoon, a small envelope arrived. There was no name on it, just her address and a stamp. She opened it slowly, expecting another thank you letter, maybe an invitation to speak. But inside was a photo. It was old, faded, but clear enough. A picture of a woman standing in front of Kola's mansion, smiling. Her hand was resting on her round belly. Enkay's hands trembled. She flipped the photo over. On the back was a name she hadn't heard before, Femi. There was no letter. No explanation. Just the photo. Enkay stared at it for hours. She knew the faces of the 6 wives. She had seen them in pictures and in the glass boxes. But this woman, Femi, she didn't look like any of them. Was there a seventh? Yukai couldn't sleep that night. She lay on her back, holding the photo, asking herself questions she didn't want answers to. The next morning, she returned to the police. She asked to see the final reports from Cola's case. They were hesitant at first, but Yukai had become a respected voice in the community. They gave her access. She read everything, every photo, every file. No mention of Femi. She asked, "Are you sure there were only 6 women?" The officer, a tired man named Inspector Boma, looked at her. 6 coffins. 6 rings. 6 families confirmed. Why do you ask? Yukai showed him the photo. His face shifted. We never saw her, he said. This photo, it's real? Yukai nodded. It was sent to me. I don't know who by. The inspector rubbed his chin. Maybe someone knows something we missed. He copied the photo and said he'd look into it. But Yukai didn't wait. She had learned not to wait when her heart was speaking. She printed copies of the photo and visited villages. She showed it to old women and market sellers. Some shook their heads. Some thought she was just chasing ghosts. But in one small town outside Asaba, a fruit seller squinted at the photo and said, I've seen this woman before. Yukai leaned closer. Where? She was here many years ago. She came with a man in a black car. He said she was his wife. They bought pineapples from me. She looked happy. Yukai's heart skipped. Did you hear her name? The woman shook her head. No. But she left her earrings. I found them in my stall the next day. The woman reached into a small wooden box and pulled out a pair of golden earrings shaped like suns. Yukai felt her breath catch. She remembered those earrings. She had seen them before, on the shelf in the forbidden room next to a photo frame that was turned backward. She thanked the woman and left. The earrings were real. The woman was real. But where was she now? Yukai returned to Inspector Boma. She was there, Yukai said. Femi. I saw her earrings in the ritual room. Cola kept them. Why would he do that if she wasn't important? The inspector looked tired. We thought we found everything, Yukai. But maybe we were wrong. That night, Yukai couldn't rest. She went to her small study at the center. She pulled out all her notes, all the maps of Cola's mansion she had drawn from memory. She stared at the layout. Then something struck her. She had always thought the forbidden room was the end of the hallway. But there was a small space between the wall and the edge of the house, like a gap. A dead space. A hidden space. She called Inspector Boma the next morning. We need to go back, she said. There's something we missed. The mansion had been locked for months. Overgrown weeds were climbing the walls. But the police opened the gate again. Yukai walked straight upstairs. She entered the forbidden room. The smell had faded, but the air still felt heavy. She walked to the back wall. She knocked. Hello. She looked around for a tool. One of the officers brought her a small hammer. She hit the wall. Once, twice, 3 times. Plaster cracked. Behind it was wood. They tore it open. And behind the wall was another door, smaller, hidden, sealed shut. Kai's skin went cold. The door was locked. Not with a key, but with a chain and a small padlock. Inspector Boma stepped forward. He broke the lock with a cutter. The door creaked open. It led to a narrow staircase going down. A basement, one no one had ever seen before. They descended slowly. The stairs were damp. The air smelled like wet cloth and metal. The bottom was a small room no bigger than a store. Inside was a mattress on the floor, a chair, and an old table. On the table were plates, books, a lantern. And in the corner a photo frame. Yukai picked it up. It was the same woman, Femi. She looked around. The room was empty. But someone had lived there. They found a diary in the drawer. first page read, "My name is Femi. I was Cola's first wife. I don't know if I'm alive or dead anymore." Yukai sat down, her hands shaking. She read every page. Femi had written about being locked in the basement. Cola had told her she was sick. He gave her food, water, but no sunlight. He came only at night. She had fallen pregnant, and then he vanished. The last entry read, "If anyone finds this, please tell the world I existed. I was not just another ghost in Cola's house." Tears rolled down Yukai's cheeks. She whispered, "We found you. You're not forgotten." They searched every inch of the basement. No body. No bones. Just Femi's words. Yukai returned to town with the diary. She held a press conference. She read parts of it aloud. The city went quiet. People cried. Femi became the 7th name in Yukai's book. A name once hidden, now brought to light. But the mystery remained. Where did she go? Did she escape? Did she die and was buried secretly? Yukai knew the answers might never come. But truth was like light, it spread. And the door that had stayed locked for years was now open. It had been 3 months since Yukai uncovered the hidden basement in Cola's mansion. 3 months since Femi's diary was found. The world had listened. The city had watched. People wept when they heard Femi's words read aloud. They could feel her fear between each line, her loneliness, and the aching hope that someone, anyone, might find her. But even with the truth out, something still didn't sit right inside Yukai. She tried to go back to normal. She went to Safe Bloom, taught makeup lessons, and laughed with her girls. She visited schools, gave speeches, and even met with leaders who wanted to support her center. But at night, her dreams grew darker. She saw Cola, always standing at the edge of the mansion with his hand on his chest, the gold key swinging on his chain. His eyes followed her even when she turned away. In the dream, the mansion was alive, breathed like a beast, waiting to pull her back inside. Sometimes Femi appeared too. But she wasn't dead. She was running. Always running. One morning, Yukai woke with a cold sweat on her neck and a name in her mouth, Madame Osaro. She had only met her once, during one of Cola's early visits to her village. She was an older woman, always wearing long robes and heavy necklaces. Cola had called her auntie, but he never said what she did or where she lived. She stayed quiet, only smiling when Yukai greeted her. But something had felt off. Yukai had seen her whispering to Cola the night before the wedding. And then, just like that, she was gone. No one ever saw her again. Now, the memory returned like a knock on the door. Yukai reached out to Inspector Boma again. "Do you know a woman named Madame Osaro?" she asked. He shook his head. "We didn't investigate family members. Cola didn't give us any." He called her auntie. "I saw her only once," Yukai said. "But I think she knows something." They searched old photos from the wedding and finally found one. Madame Osaro stood in the background, tall, sharp-eyed, with rings on every finger. Boma sent the photo to several villages. Days passed. Then a call came. A priest from a rural town called Olakan replied, "That woman is here. She's lived in a small house on the edge of our village for years. We call her Madam Night." Yukai and Boma drove there the next day. Olakan was quiet. The roads were dusty and the air was still. People stared as the police car passed. Children stopped playing. Old women peeked from behind curtains. They found the house easily. It stood alone next to a dry riverbed. The windows were covered with thick curtains. Red powder had been sprinkled across the doorway. A strange wooden symbol hung from the roof. Boma knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Then, slowly, the door creaked open. Madame Osaro stood in the doorway. She looked older, thinner. Her eyes were still sharp, but her skin was pale. She didn't look surprised. I've been waiting, she said. Yukai stepped forward. You know why we're here. Yes, Madame Osaru said. Come in. Inside, the house smelled like herbs and oil. Shelves were filled with bottles, feathers, roots, and chalk. On the wall was a faded photo, Kola as a boy, standing next to a younger Madame Osaru. I raised him, she said. After his parents died. Boma pulled out a notebook. We need answers. You knew what he was doing, didn't you? She didn't deny it. I warned him, she said softly. He went too far. Too far, Yukai snapped. He murdered women. I never agreed with the sacrifices, Madame Osaru said. But I gave him the first book. I showed him the old ways. Yukai's stomach turned. You taught him how to do those rituals? Madame Osaru nodded. Not for evil, not for death. I wanted to protect him. His family line is cursed. Every man dies young. His father, grandfather, great-grandfather, all dead before 40. I wanted to break the curse. So he traded unborn children for time? Boma asked. Madame Osaru looked away. He found that path on his own. Once he began, he was no longer mine to guide. And Femi? Kai asked. Do you know what happened to her? Madame Osaru hesitated. Her hands trembled as she reached for a box on a shelf. Inside was a necklace made of tiny white beads. She wore this, she whispered. She ran away. The night he brought her down to the basement, she attacked him with a broken cup. She escaped through the back door. Where did she go? Yukai asked quickly. Madame Osaru shook her head. I don't know. He searched for weeks. He was afraid she would expose him. But she vanished. Yukai's heart lifted. So she could still be alive? Madame Osaru nodded slowly. Yes. If the spirits didn't find her first. They left with the necklace and 1,000 new questions. Back in Asaba, Yukai placed Femi's beads next to her photo and wrote in her notebook. She escaped. She might be free. But she wasn't done yet. She contacted every clinic and shelter in the region, asking about any woman who had arrived years ago, pregnant, scared, with no name. Most said no. Some sent false leads. Then one shelter in Wari replied. Yes, the woman said over the phone. There was a girl. She came in weak, bleeding, wouldn't speak. We called her Grace because she didn't tell us her name. She had a baby. A boy. Yukai's heart nearly burst. When was this? 7 years ago, the woman said. But she left. The one night she just disappeared. Did she leave a photo? No. But she left a drawing. The woman sent a photo of the drawing. It was simple, lines and shadows. A house. A child. And a tree with a crooked branch. Yukai knew that tree. Stood outside her old university library. She drove there the next morning. She sat on the bench beside the tree, holding the photo in her lap, waiting. She didn't know for what, maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Then, as the sun began to set, a woman walked by with a young boy. The woman stopped. She looked at Yukai. Yukai stood up, heart in her throat. Their eyes locked. Femi. Yukai whispered. The woman's lips trembled. The boy looked up at her. Mama. Femi stepped closer. I never thought anyone would find me, she said. Yukai cried and held her. Femi was real. Alive. Safe. And the truth had finally come home. Yukai stood at the gates of the Safe Bloom Center, staring into the warm sky as the sun dipped behind the tall buildings of Asaba. In her hand was a necklace made of tiny white beads, Femi's beads. In her heart was a mix of relief, fire, and fear. Kind of feeling that only comes when a long, terrible story is finally reaching its last page. Inside, the women were laughing. Some were folding clothes, others were sewing brightly colored fabrics. The sound of joy floated in the air like perfume. The center was full, every room had stories blooming inside it. But outside, Enkay still felt the weight of what she had seen, what she had lived through. Kola was gone. His mansion, once a symbol of wealth and wonder, had been taken over by the government. The community had voted to turn it into a memorial. No one wanted to live in a place soaked in silence and sorrow. But something strange had started happening. People who walked near the house at night reported hearing voices. Some said they saw lights flicker through the windows even though there was no electricity. A few swore they saw a woman in white standing on the balcony, staring out toward the road. The newspapers called it the curse of Kola's mansion. Enkay never laughed at these stories. She believed them. And she knew exactly what she had to do next. She visited Femi every week. Femi now lived in a small apartment near the river with her son, Kore. He was 7 years old and full of energy. He had Femi's smile, but his eyes, those were Kola's. Femi didn't talk much about what she had gone through. But she smiled more now. She walked taller. One evening, Enkay brought her a simple gift. A photo album filled with the names and faces of the 6 wives who hadn't survived. Each page was decorated with their favorite color, a flower they once liked, a note written by someone who had known them. "This is for you," Enkay said softly. "You were the first. And now you're the last one standing. We remember them through you." Femi held the book to her chest, her eyes full of silent tears. "I want to help," she said. "I want to speak too. I want to teach girls to run, to listen to their fear, to never marry silence." So Femi joined the Safe Bloom Center as a storyteller. She sat with young girls and told them about shadows that looked like love and doors that should never be opened. She didn't tell them everything, but she gave them enough to think. One of the girls in the group, a shy one named Amara, came up to her one day and whispered, "I think my sister is in danger. A man came to see my parents last week. He brings them gifts. He says he wants to marry her, but his smile feels wrong." Femi didn't panic. She helped Amara write a letter. They sent it to the man, thanking him for the interest, but saying the family had chosen to wait. Femi also spoke with Amara's mother, gently and carefully, about the importance of watching the man's behavior. A week later, the man never came back. Sometimes, saving one girl was the same as saving 10. But one problem remained. The spirits. Femi began to have dreams again, heavy ones. In her sleep, she saw the 6 women dressed in white walking in a line. Their bellies were round. Their eyes were full of water. They didn't speak. They just stared at her. Enkay had the same dreams too. One night, they met and sat beside a fire in Enkay's small backyard. Smoke rose between them and the wind whispered in their ears. "They're not free," Femi said. "No," Enkay replied. "They want something. They want rest." Enkay nodded. "We need to give them a final burial. A proper one." So they went to the government. They fought for it. They asked for the bodies, preserved and buried quietly in Kola's compound, to be exhumed, named properly, blessed, and laid to rest in a sacred place. It wasn't easy. Some officials said it was a waste. Others said it would bring bad luck. But Enkay stood firm. She told them, these women died without a voice. They deserve to be heard now. If we can't give them life, we must give them peace. A month later, the day came. 6 coffins were brought to the city square. Each one had a name. Each had flowers. People gathered, hundreds of them. Families of the lost wives came, some in shame, some in tears. Priest prayed. An imam spoke too. The city listened. Then the coffins were taken to a hill on the edge of town under tall trees where the air was quiet. They were buried there side by side. A marble stone was placed in front of them with words etched into it. They were not forgotten. They were not weak. They were stolen. And now they are home. As the final handful of earth hit the graves, the sky darkened briefly, then cleared. A soft wind passed through the trees. And for the first time in months, Enkay felt light. But stories don't end where graves do. The Safe Bloom Center was growing fast. Donations came in from all over. They opened a second center in another city. Femi helped lead it. One day, a young journalist came to interview Enkay. Her name was Zina, and she was full of fire. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "What keeps you going?" Enkay looked around the room. The sewing machines humming, the mirrors reflecting strong girls, the laughter that filled the air. Then she looked back at Zina. "Because I lived," she said. "Because I saw what darkness can do. And I chose not to stay silent." Zina smiled. "You know people call you the Lioness of Asaba?" Enkay laughed. "I was once a bird in a cage. Now I'm just helping others find their wings." Zina wrote a story so powerful it was shared across the country. Soon more women came forward. Some shared their own escapes. Others admitted to staying in bad marriages because they had nowhere to go. But now they had a place. And behind every story was the name of a man who tried to hide evil behind gold. Kola's name became a warning. Enkay's became a lesson. Years passed. Kore grew older. He learned who his father was, not from whispers but from truth. Femi told him everything when he turned 13. He cried, but he didn't run. "I'm not him," he said. "No," Femi said. "You are light from a dark place." Enkay sat with him after. She gave him a journal and a pen. "Write your story," she said. "Tell the world who you choose to be." One morning, a woman arrived at the Safe Bloom gate. She was barefoot. Her dress was torn. She carried a baby on her back and held the hand of a quiet child. "I heard this is where hope lives," she said. Enkay welcomed her inside. She gave her water, food, and a soft place to rest. Then she said, "You are safe here. You're not alone." And in that moment, the circle closed. Not because the evil had ended, but because the good had grown stronger. 'Cause light had found its home. 'Cause truth had been told. And because 7 women, 6 beneath the earth, 1 still breathing, had refused to be forgotten. If you have not subscribed to my channel, you might not hear my